Jessica's jaw dropped as she stared at the stranger on her doorstep. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "My great-aunt Amanda left me an inheritance?" The man, dressed in a cheap suit, gave a patronizing smile. "Yes, ma'am. It seems your aunt was quite well off, unbeknownst to most. Funny how the elderly can be full of surprises, isn't it?" Jessica let out an incredulous laugh. "Aunt Amanda? Wealthy? I'm sorry, but you must have the wrong person. That woman lived like a pauper." "Be that as it may," the man replied with a shrug. "Your presence is requested at the reading of her will, Friday at 3 p.m. sharp, at McGrady & Sons Law Offices downtown. Don't be late." He tipped his hat and turned to leave. "Wait!" Jessica called after him, but he was already walking briskly to his car. She closed the door slowly, her mind reeling. An inheritance from Aunt Amanda? It didn't make any sense. Jessica sat at her small kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee as she thought back on her relationship with her great-aunt. Truth be told, they had never been particularly close. Amanda was a mean-spirited, miserly old woman who never had a kind word to say to anyone. But she was family, and Jessica made an effort to visit her regularly over the years, helping with chores, bringing meals, and arranging birthday celebrations. No matter how slyly Amanda behaved, Jessica always kept a patient smile on her face. Her husband, Stephen, on the other hand, had no time for the old battle-axe. He'd only met Amanda a handful of times, once before their wedding and once or twice after, but that was more than enough for him. The way she lived and the snide comments she made about him, he saw no reason to subject himself to her miserable presence. Jessica sighed, wondering if there could be any truth to the lawyer's claims. Had Amanda really been secretly wealthy all this time? She tried to picture what she would do with an inheritance. Maybe she could finally quit her second job waiting tables on the weekends. Maybe she could actually get a decent night's sleep for once. Glancing up at the clock, Jessica swore under her breath. She was going to be late for her shift at the diner if she didn't get a move on. She gulped down the rest of her coffee, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. She'd have to call Stephen from the bus and let him know about this perplexing development. As luck would have it, Jessica managed to snag a seat on the crowded bus. She pulled out her phone and dialed Stephen's number, hoping he was feeling well enough to chat. "Hey, babe," he answered groggily. "What's up?" "You'll never believe what just happened," Jessica began. "I got a visit from some lawyer claiming Aunt Amanda left me an inheritance." "An inheritance? Can you believe it?" Stephen let out a low whistle. "No kidding." The old bird had some hidden wealth tucked away. "Apparently," Jessica said. "I'm supposed to go to a will reading on Friday afternoon. I don't know what to think." "Well, hey, that's great news," Stephen replied with forced enthusiasm. "Maybe you can finally take some time off work. Lord knows you deserve a break." Jessica smiled sadly. If only it were that simple. "We'll see. How are you feeling today? Any updates from your mom?" Stephen's mother, Emma, worked at Mercy Hospital and had been pulling strings to get him seen by specialists for his chronic health issues. His sensitive constitution made it impossible for him to hold down a job for more than a day or two before conflicts with coworkers landed him in the ER with panic attacks. Jessica had been working herself to the bone to afford his expensive vitamin regimens and herbal supplements. "Oh, you know, same old, Stephen sighed dramatically. "I don't know, hon. Maybe it's time to just accept my lot in life as an invalid. Reproducing would probably be irresponsible anyway, with my weak genes." Jessica bit her tongue, pushing down the ache in her heart at the thought of the baby they had planned to try for this year. "Don't say that," she replied softly. "You're going to get better, I know it. Just keep resting and let your mom work her magic, okay? I'll come visit you tomorrow at the hospital." After exchanging, "I love you," Jessica hung up the phone and stared out the bus window, trying not to let Stephen's negativity get to her. She had to stay positive. Maybe this inheritance would be the stroke of good luck they so desperately needed. The next morning, Jessica arrived at room 242 in Mercy Hospital, excited to see Stephen. She knocked twice and entered with a big smile, only to have it quickly fade as Stephen scowled at her from his bed. "Hey, babe," she said brightly, leaning in to give him a kiss. He turned his head away. "You didn't put on any makeup today, seriously?" he asked irritably. Every other wife on this floor looks like a model when they visit, and I'm stuck with a hack. Jessica recoiled as if slapped. Stephen, how can you say that to me? You know how exhausted I am from work. I barely have time to. Yeah, you're a big martyr. I get it, he cut her off, waving his hand dismissively. When's that inheritance money coming in again? Hopefully soon, so you can actually make yourself presentable. Blinking back tears, Jessica turned and fled the room without another word. She stumbled down the hallway, finally collapsing on a bench near the elevators. Was this really what her marriage had come to? As she sat with her head in her hands, she overheard the conversation of two male patients strolling by. I told my old lady I had to stay here through the weekend for tests, one chuckled to the other. Really, I've got a poker game lined up with the orderly and enough booze to drop an elephant. Same, bro, his friend replied with a grin. What the wives don't know won't hurt them, right? They think we're saints for being stuck here. Jessica thought she might be sick. Did all men behave this way behind closed doors? She shook her head firmly. No, not her Stephen. He would never lie to her like that. He was just cranky from being cooped up, that's all. She took a deep breath, dried her eyes, and headed out into the bright sunlight. Tomorrow was the big day, and she needed to focus on that. That Friday morning dawned crisp and clear. Jessica woke up early, determined to get the apartment spotless before Stephen returned home on Monday. She still couldn't quite wrap her head around the idea of receiving an inheritance. Her family had never had 2 nickels to rub together growing up, but maybe this was the fresh start they needed to finally get ahead. Arriving at the lawyer's office an hour ahead of schedule, Jessica was ushered into a plush waiting room by a friendly receptionist. Coffee? The young woman offered. Please, Jessica replied gratefully, sinking into an emerald green armchair that probably cost more than her entire living room set. She was just stirring in her cream and sugar when her cell phone started buzzing incessantly. Stephen, she muttered, guessing he was calling to see how big the inheritance was. She answered, rolling her eyes good-naturedly. Oh yeah, Stephen. Can you blame me? This is huge, hon. So spill the beans already. I won't know anything for at least another hour, she explained patiently. I promise, as soon as I have a number, you'll be the first to know. As the minutes ticked by, Jessica found herself getting more and more anxious. What would she do if it was life-changing money? What would she do if it wasn't? When her name was finally called, her heart leaped into her throat. Miss Jessica, please come with me. The plush carpet muffled her footsteps as she was led into a stately office with walls lined with law books. An older gentleman in a 3-piece suit rose from behind a massive oak desk to shake her hand. Miss Jessica, I'm Bernard McGrady. So glad you could make it today. Thank you for having me, Jessica replied automatically, taking a seat across from him. I have to admit, this is all quite overwhelming. My aunt wasn't exactly forthcoming about her finances. Mr. McGrady chuckled. No, she certainly had a reputation for being tight-lipped, but I can assure you, your great-aunt Amanda was a woman of considerable means. He slid a file folder across the desk to her. Jessica opened it with trembling hands and nearly fell out of her chair when she saw the number neatly printed on the page. This has to be a mistake, she gasped. There are too many zeros. It can't possibly be $6.5 million. Mr. McGrady smiled. Let me assure you, there's no mistake. Jessica clutched the folder to her chest, her head spinning. $6.5 million. It was more money than she ever could have dreamed of. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat. Wait until Stephen heard about this. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone under the desk and hurriedly typed out a text to her husband. Inheritance is $6,500. Can you believe it? In her excitement, she didn't even realize she left off the last 3 crucial zeros before hitting send. Unable to sit through the rest of the meeting, Jessica made hasty excuses about needing to process the shocking news and fled the office, clutching the legal folder containing her new future. She had to see Stephen right away and share this incredible, life-altering development. He was going to absolutely flip. Bypassing the bus, she hailed a cab and barked out the address to Mercy Hospital, fidgeting the whole way there as the city blocks crawled by. When the car finally pulled up to the main entrance, she threw a wad of bills at the driver, not even bothering to wait for change. She took the stairs two at a time up to the second floor, bursting with excitement to reveal their new fortune to the love of her life. As she approached room 242, however, the sound of familiar voices made her pause outside the door. It was Stephen and his mother, Emma, deep in conversation. Jessica knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but something compelled her to remain still and listen. "And the stupid cow actually bought it," Stephen was saying, his tone dripping with derision. "Can you believe she thinks I'm actually sick? Like I'd ever waste my time in this hellhole if I didn't have to." Emma laughed. "You've got her wrapped around your finger. So naive, that one. I still can't believe you married so far beneath you." "Tell me about it," Stephen groaned. "But did you hear the best part? Aunt Amanda left some money. Once she gets that transferred over to my account, I'm dropping her like a bad habit. Let her keep playing nurse and housekeeper to some other sap." Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. She blinked rapidly, convinced she must be having some sort of nightmare. There was no way this could be real, but the cavalier laughter coming from Stephen and Emma confirmed the devastating truth. Her entire marriage, her entire life with this man, had been nothing but a lie. Unable to listen to another word, she turned and fled, not even noticing the hot tears streaming down her cheeks. She ran and ran until her lungs burned and her feet ached. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, she found herself by the East River, staring out at the murky water. As she watched the swirling currents, Aunt Amanda's voice echoed in her head. "That boy is a lazy freeloader who's going to bleed you dry," the old woman had warned Jessica after meeting Stephen for the first time. "Mark my words, Missy, you're making a huge mistake." At the time, Jessica had written it off as the ramblings of a bitter old spinster. But now, with her heart shattered into a million pieces, she saw the truth of it with stunning clarity. Aunt Amanda had been right all along, and by some miracle, she had ensured Jessica would have the means to break free before it was too late. Squaring her shoulders, Jessica turned her back on the river and strolled purposefully down the sidewalk. She had calls to make and divorce papers to file. As for Stephen, he would be in for the shock of his life when he came home on Monday to an empty apartment. In the meantime, Jessica decided she would go stay with her best friend, Tara, for a few days before taking off on a much-needed solo trip out to the Hamptons to heal. For the first time in years, as the warm June sun beat down on her face, Jessica felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her life wasn't ruined after all. Maybe this was just the start of an incredible new chapter. She couldn't wait to find out. 3 days later, Stephen hobbled to the door of their apartment, prescription pain meds in hand. "Honey, I'm home," he called out mockingly. "Where's my inheritance check?" Silence greeted him. Frowning, he looked around in confusion, noticing the bare walls and empty shelves for the first time. A single sheet of paper lay on the kitchen counter. "Dear Stephen," it began in Jessica's familiar loopy scroll. "By the time you read this, I'll be long gone. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, I know everything. I know you've been faking being sick to avoid working. I know you and your mother have been laughing at me behind my back. And I know you were planning to take my money and run. Well, the joke's on you because that inheritance wasn't $65,000, it was $6.5 million. And every penny of it is mine. I've already filed for divorce. You have 30 days to collect your things and get out of my apartment. Have a nice life. Jessica." Stephen let out a strangled yell of shock and rage as the letter fluttered to the floor. He kicked a chair in frustration, swearing up a storm. How had he underestimated her so badly? He thought he had her under his thumb. As he sank to the ground in defeat, Jessica was worlds away, stretched out on a beach chair with the sea breeze ruffling her hair. She sipped a fruity cocktail as she watched the waves roll in, thinking about the cozy beach bungalow she had just put an offer on. "Everything happens for a reason," Aunt Amanda used to say. Jessica raised her glass to the sky in a silent toast, thanking her wise aunt for the lesson and the inheritance.